Hi, guys. Hope you're having a great day. Everyone, I'm Vicki Wolf. These are my three sons, Sam Wolf, Sean Wolf, Jeremy Wolf. And we're going to sit here and just share some of our experiences from my breast cancer diagnosis. I'm a four-time breast cancer survivor. So I'm just going to share some information about breast cancer, about learning about my genetic mutation and what that meant to my family, why I was tested, and how I can help them in the future, along with my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So I'll begin by saying that in 1995, I had my first breast cancer diagnosis. It was contained in the duct, so it was DCIS. And I was 37 years of age, and I just thought, I'm young and first time, and I don't know, we'll just do a lumpectomy and move on. Unfortunately, a year and a half later, I had a second diagnosis, completely different cells, but still DCIS. And I made it about 10 years. When I was 47. I did have my third breast cancer diagnosis. I learned at that point, visiting Dr. Fox at Penn, that we discussed whether I should go on for chemotherapy. It was more invasive. And while sitting in the office, I saw a pamphlet talking about BRCA, genetic mutations, testing, what it means for the family. And I thought that's something I would like to learn more about, if not for myself, really. I wasn't even thinking of myself. It was more about my children and the future and what that might hold. And maybe one day there'll be a vaccine, which thankfully we're getting closer to. But so I went ahead and went through genetic testing at the University of Pennsylvania with the Vassar Center through Dr. Domchek, and learned that I carried the BRCA2 mutation. I shared that with my three sons, along with two brothers. No girls, no females in my life, but I understood that BRCA could be passed down from, a mother or father to a son or daughter. And so they all heard me, but I'm not sure if they really all understood what that meant and what it entailed. They were younger, in college years, and so it kind of went on the back burner, I think. 10 years later, unfortunately, I did have my fourth breast cancer diagnosis and did complete a double mastectomy. I was being followed by Dr. Domchek with breast MRIs and mammograms. So we found it early, which was incredible, and I'm very thankful for. But it definitely takes its toll, and waited for my sons to be of age to have a further conversation about having genetic testing done. And I'm going to let my sons talk about a little bit about their history and what that meant for them. Who
Happy to go
you want to
first.
start? Okay.
I guess as the oldest, I'll start off here. It's funny. You were 47, and I thought you were pretty old at that point.
Thanks.
Now I'm 42, and it doesn't feel like it was like you were. So I think, yeah, it didn't. It definitely didn't resonate. When you shared the information, I don't think I fully comprehended what a genetic mutation even meant, and that could actually have some effect on me, even though it seems obvious. I was probably naive at that young age, and I was early 20s. And then two, it was a male and it was female, and kind of like, all right, so one, I'm 20 and I'm not worried about it, and two, I'm a guy, so I'm really not worried about it. So it's probably both of those things that kind of hit me. Although obviously I know a lot more now than I did then about both the impact it has on males, as well as 47 isn't quite as old as it seemed to a 20-year-old. So Yeah, I mean, I think at the time I really didn't think much of it. It wasn't probably until your more recent diagnosis and probably even other, my uncle, your brother's diagnosis, and then just becoming more mature and of age where it started to say, hey, I wonder if this could affect me and my children as I was, starting to contemplate that. I think when it was first really like, maybe I should get this checked out. In fact, I had already had a child on the way when I went to do my genetic testing, not even realizing that there might have been some things that I could have or maybe would have considered then, but get more into that later.
Jeremy, Sean?
Hi, I am Sean Wolf. I'm actually the youngest of the three. Jeremy and I are twins, but he was born 45 seconds before me, so he gets to claim the middle child.
Mm.
I mean, this was something that never really was put into context for me until I was obviously older. Sort of like Sam had said, really, like, I was probably 13 at the time of my mom's first diagnosis, around the young teenager years, and didn't really understood what was happening at the time. It came back again later. Still didn't really understand it until probably the third time, when I was definitely about, older, and really understood what cancer was, what she was going through in chemo, and it really put things into a lot more perspective. And obviously there was a lot of questions at that time. And I think once she really started to develop the knowledge, right? Because, after 3 times you start to learn a lot, and you want to understand, you want to ask questions, right? You start to become, unfortunately, an expert in breast cancer. And, every time she went through it, we learned so much more that helped me understand it. And for me, I am BRCA2 positive. I learned that out probably 10 years ago, maybe a little less, maybe 5 years ago, that I was BRCA2 positive. I kind of went into it knowing that I was. My mom and I have a lot of the same genes. So, yep, I kind of figured it was going to happen, and it did, which didn't really scare me until I started having kids. And then I had a daughter of my own. So that hit me a little harder too, knowing that I could pass that on to her. So, for me, it's become a lot more about, as you get older, it sucks, and there's things that happen. And I thought this was just, okay, we have heart disease in our family, we have high cholesterol in our family, and now we have cancer. But it wasn't until all the recent events and me getting older did I start to understand it, that, I am now way more at risk of not just breast cancer, but other cancers like pancreatic cancer or prostate cancer. And then it's going to mean that I have to do a lot more due diligence or proactiveness to stay ahead of it. And not just for me, but, for my family or for others, so that I can educate people on what it means to be BRCA2 positive.
Just you mentioned passing it down and your concerns to your daughter, but I'm sorry to enlighten or bring to the forefront, but you have a son too. So unfortunately, the risk doesn't just fall on your daughter. So, Jeremy, you want to mention? I will say that the two of you, I did request for Jeremy and Sean to go through genetic testing at the same time, because they are identical twins, as you can probably see. And so if one carried the mutation, the other one did as well. And it was important for me to make sure they heard the information together at the same time from the right resources, not from one another. So,
yeah, I can share my perspective. It's funny, I remember it a little bit differently at a younger age. I remember, my mom mentioning going through, genetic testing and wanting to keep it a secret from us and not telling us the results, because she didn't want us to have to, worry about that at such a young age. And really, it wasn't until later that she actually had told us. I don't know if that's the way she remembers it or not, or anybody else, but that's at least my perspective of it. And so, I do appreciate, even though I don't think I fully would have understood the context of it, but like not knowing until I was ready to make the decision or on my own on whether or not I wanted to find out what that meant, and what that brings with it. I think, as you know now that I am a BRCA2 carrier as well. And I think that it's very important to know that because of the health risks associated with it. And it was probably about the same time as Sam and Sean when I started to think about having kids and growing my own family and, getting older. Like Sam said, it's funny, the first time you had breast cancer was 37, and I keep thinking you were older, but now I think about it and I'm like, crud, I'm 38. Like I'm at that age that you were when you first had cancer.
You
And
were
so
10. You were 10. It was in 1995. You were 10 years of age when I had my first diagnosis, and then like 12. So the first, in the beginnings, it was young, but when I learned about the genetic mutation, you were probably about 20 years of
yeah,
age, but away at school, so a little bit more removed,
yeah. So I mean, I think it's important to, it's important for you, for your family, for to know what you need to do to stay diligent in making sure you're healthy. And I'm happy that I got tested, and maybe not so happy with the results, but I think it just means that I have to be more proactive and make sure that I'm, being more mindful of what I'm feeling, when I'm feeling it, and things like that.
right? So yeah, it's pretty crazy when you think about, comparing our ages. That I was 37 and you're 38, you and Sean right now. And I know several young women at this age that have been diagnosed recently, this past week. And it's just, I was there and it's kind of surreal. My mother had been diagnosed 1 month before me. My aunt about 10 years prior. So they were both in their 80s when, and I'm thinking, I'm only 37, I'm only 39. I don't really have to think about this, which is why I just went ahead and did the lumpectomies. But, at 48, got a little trickier now, it's a third diagnosis, it's more invasive. It's come back again. I live a healthy lifestyle. I try to make good choices, exercise, limit the alcohol, eat a lot of organic foods, take different supplements, whatever. And I think it does help. I do believe all those things make a difference. Maybe I would have had a third diagnosis earlier, 5 years earlier, but so, and I know you all do the same too. We live that lifestyle now, knowing that we have that little bit higher risk. A BRCA genetic mutation doesn't mean that you're going to get cancer. It means you're at a higher risk of being diagnosed of a cancer. So it's important to keep that in mind. We're not living with this, black cloud over us, just waiting for it to drop of saying you're gonna get it. But it does mean we have to be more diligent. And, I know you both have had baseline mammograms completed, and, Sam, you even had an earlier colonoscopy, just because of the family history, whether you carry that genetic mutation directly or not, it's unfortunately, I have a lot of cancer in my family. Like I said, my mother, my aunt, they had two brothers. all passing away in their 40s, a long time ago. Of course, they didn't have the testing they do now, but cancer really hangs over us with that. And so just being aware and making good choices is really important. I shared the results of the genetic mutation with both of your uncles. And, and they heard me and they said, yep, they understand. But they really didn't think, as men with breast cancer, that was going to be, an issue for them. And a year and a half after my third diagnosis, Uncle Harvey's diagnosed with breast cancer. What are the chances? Well, we know it's a small percentage, but it doesn't matter. A percentage is a percentage. And fortunately, because of the information he had, he was able to respond quickly, not hold off and, think, oh, I have a pain. Maybe I worked out at the gym too much or something, but just get it checked. And that's what was really important. So, unfortunately, he was diagnosed with male breast cancer. And, we started looking for information and found that there was just nothing out there about men for breast cancer, which is why Uncle Harvey and I started our own nonprofit organization to help educate and support men. His breast cancer awareness came about from a diagnosis, not unusual. Nobody thinks about these things until it happens to them. And then, a light bulb goes off, maybe, oh, I heard about this, but it can happen to anyone. And it's, so, we're out there at this point, and we did that knowing that, I have 3 sons, Uncle Harvey has 2 sons, and we want things to be different for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we all got tested. I think that's why it's important for anyone to get tested. I think it's important for you to know, and I said this earlier, but a lot of people go in and they ask their questions in doctor's office when they first go in there. It's like, do you have a history of high blood pressure? Do you have a history of cholesterol? You know what I mean? And it's not talked about whether or not anything is genetically related or not, right? Like you can be genetically, you can have a genetic family of high blood pressure versus just having high blood pressure in the family. And there's a difference. And I think that there's so much more information and education and awareness that can be done around BRCA and what that means. And even, Sam and I and Jeremy talk about this a lot too, but heart issues, cholesterol, like, do we have that in our family, or is it genetic? What is it? And, I think there's great things that, Penn is doing to talk about BRCA. There's the Vassar Center for Young Leadership Council that Jeremy and I have been on emails and talk to people about, that is educating for young people with BRCA. And it's a great way to get information and stay connected into a resource.
And I love that you're involved, because not only that, you're hearing things firsthand, you're learning. It's not just coming from your mom, but you're hearing what other young adults feel like going through this, or, will go through when they're tested, if they should be tested, when should they get tested. So this young, leadership is perfect. And it makes me feel at least that you're being educated and you have the support you both need.
Yeah, I think it's great to talk to other people, hear their thoughts, their perspectives, learn from what other people your age are doing or going through, and things like that. I even recently, one of my daughter's school friends' parents, who's also a twin brother and a BRCA carrier, we talk about it because we're both, going through the same thing. And so we think about what we're both experiencing, and and it's great having someone to talk to.
I think too, right? Like, for anyone today, right? Like technology and science kind of has evolved so much that, just like you said, being diagnosed with BRCA, right, doesn't mean you're going to get diagnosed with cancer. It also doesn't mean that if you do get cancer that you're going to die from cancer, right? And I think so much of what you can do today with the technology and science that's out there, if you're proactive, right? Whether it's genetic testing for BRCA or a host of other diseases that you could be genetically predisposed to, getting that information and knowing your risk level is just the starting point, right? And then there's things you can do. You can't eliminate the risk, but there's things you can start to do to mitigate it. And then there's things that you can do that if the risk, even with mitigation happens, that you actually catch it early enough because you're aware and you're looking for it, that when you do have it, it's much less serious than had you not. So, I think whether you're talking about cardiovascular disease or other genetic diseases, right? There's a lot of genetic things out there, right? And it starts with just getting the testing, right? And knowing, and then from there, you can start to put a plan in place, right? What can I be doing to be more preventatively healthy? And what can I be doing to make sure that I'm also, if and when something happens, I'm ready and I have a plan in place. So, it's unfortunate, right, that if people don't take those steps, I think early on, because you're just, time is your kind of best friend with these things. So you want to get ahead of them.
How did you feel, Sam, when I really remember the day you went to get tested, and how did you feel and what did you think, like, how it was going to affect you one way or another if you carried, we all carry a BRCA, but it's the mutation part of it. So how'd you feel if you had the BRCA mutation?
I ended up not having it, so I'll say that first, just for context. But if I did have it, I kind of just felt the way I described it. Like, if I don't have that, I might have something else, right? Like it's not, and I probably do. We all probably have some genetic thing, right? And I just felt like knowing was kind of, I've since done testing for many other genetic diseases too, right? Because I want to know for all of them, right, what my risks are, so I can so I can plan and be aware and get ahead of them, so that they don't become serious health issues later in life if I can do anything to avoid it. And that was kind of my point of view with this too, was let's go into this, let's get the information, and then, whether it's this or it's something else, right? I can then start to do proactive things to mitigate the risk of an adverse or seriously adverse outcome. I think the only thing that I really remember, though, like, not regretting, but just not knowing, like, when I went to get tested, my wife was already pregnant with our first child, and I didn't know at the time and I don't know what I would have done differently, and my brothers made different decisions, and there's a lot of financial reasons to make different decisions, but I was made aware in that first consultation that, there's things that you could do or choose to do to help mitigate the risk of passing the genetic disease on to your offspring or children, right? If you do have it, they're not inexpensive things, and they're not necessarily the easiest things, but there are things. And for me, it wasn't even a consideration because I was already past the point of having to make that decision.
Yeah.
But I was like, I wish I had that information a little earlier. I don't know if I would have done anything differently or not, but I kind of was like, oh, maybe I would have, or maybe I wouldn't have. So it just, I remember leaving thinking like, shoot, I didn't know that. So
Jeremy, you want to talk a little bit about, how you felt? Sam mentioned about, what to do before starting your family, and
Yeah, I think my wife and I really talked about it, and we didn't feel comfortable in, lack of a better word, playing with science and determining how that will affect, our kids in the future. And we know that, knowing that I carry that gene, that whether it's my son or my daughter, when the time is right, and we will sit down and have an important conversation with them, letting them know, that daddy carries a genetic mutation that can be passed down. It puts you at higher risk for, certain types of cancers. And it's important that you do your due diligence in getting screened early, whether that's a vaccine, who knows, 12, 13, 14, 15 years from now, when that time comes, what that conversation will look like, depending on the advancements in medicine. But, for my daughter, if that's a early double mastectomy, because that's what she feels like she will be the right decision for her, then we'll support her and help her through those things, and just trying to stay informed with what advancements are out there, staying up to date in terms of the futures in medicine and things like that. Then that will be it. Sorry, my son woke up from a nap and he is now joining the conversation.
Sean, how about you? I mean, you had decisions to make. And you
Yeah,
chose.
I mean, kind of very similar to what Jeremy said. My wife and I sat down. Obviously, there's a lot of thoughts and considerations and what ifs, and you just don't know. And so for us, we decided that it was best to do nothing. And I think the first step in all of this is just that we knew. And that would be what I would say to anyone is no, right? Like, that's the most important thing that you can do in all of it is go get tested, right? Like, if you have cancer in your family, it doesn't have to be breast, but if there is cancer in your family, go understand. Go get tested to see if you carry the mutation to the BRCA, if you are going to have that, you know what I mean? If your parents, if your grandparents, if someone has had it, I think the first step is just be informed, be educated, be smart. There's so many people my age in the 38 to 40 40 range who has families and parents and people who have had cancer, and they don't know if they're genetic, if they carry the mutation, if there's a genetic
Link.
variant in their family. And that's the scary part, but that's so easy to fix. And so I think, who knows what 15 years or, my daughter just turned 5, who knows what 13 years will bring when she's 18, when, the time that, is when my doctor says it's the right time to have those conversations with her. Science, as Sam said, is advancing. There's so much out there, but the first step in all of this is to just know. And it's easy today. I mean, you can do it in so many different ways. I think, Mom, you do a great job advocating for it. So I think, first step, if you don't know, ask your doctor, but I'll leave it up to the expert here to tell people how to really do it.
And I think just piggybacking off of that, like, it is important to know, and it's scary knowing, right? Like, I definitely will say that in full transparency, while my risk as a male for breast cancer is still lower than a non-BRCA healthy female, I still live with fear that for me, it's not a matter of if, it's just more of like a when. But I know that I need to be proactive, and I need to stay on top of checking and doing screenings and other things.
Do you all do each of you do yourself breast exams?
Yes, Mom, I do my self-breast exam.
Thanks, Mom.
Because that's the easiest way, knowing that you're at a higher risk, or if you're not and just want to be educated, because the problem with male breast cancer is nobody's looking, nobody's checking. You don't go for your physical and they do a breast exam on a man. It just doesn't normally happen. Even if a doctor knows your history, it's still probably doesn't happen. They might, check you for prostate, but so it's important to just in the shower once a month, check yourself, notice anything different, any signs, inversion,
It's not
lumps.
just breast cancer. It's prostate. There's no way to check.
Well,
It's
you're
just
gonna-
being informed. I just got my PSA's levels checked at 37 for a baseline. So I know. I know Sam has done it. I know Jeremy has done it too as well. So there's so many other things besides just that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what having the testing helps with, because you have been tested, because you know that you have a family history of cancer. Your doctors are, hopefully being more proactive in having baseline testing done.
Well, I also think there's insurance benefits too, right? Once you know and you test positive, then some of these things that you wouldn't be able to get at a younger age, you're able to, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think you now qualify for.
Right, right.
And it doesn't have to be men. I mean, I think there's so many women out there that don't know whether or not they have the BRCA gene, and they're so much more likely to get breast cancer, especially with their hereditary, whose moms has had it, and the mom doesn't know if they have it. And it's just like, it's so easy to do the test. It's a blood test. There's other ways to do it too, but like,
Right.
for
Information.
me, it was, I'd rather know and be safe and stuff and proactive than not know. And I still probably would have been safe. I still probably would have been proactive, but like, I'm just so much more hyper vigilant about it.
Right. Well, I'm really thankful that you have all gone through the testing, didn't sweep it under the rug at a family conversation and say, yeah, I'll do it one day. And that one day never happens until it's too late. So I'm extremely thankful that you have all been tested, no matter the results. I think it's great information, and I'm glad that I can be here to help support you through all this. After 4 diagnoses, things could be different, but I'm here with you, and we're all together to have these talks and to hear what's new, what the advances are, what's going on in research. And I think that we're headed in a great direction. I know the Vassar Center is doing a phenomenal job with research and being proactive in educating, being there for support. And I'm thankful that I'm a part, and we're all a part of, of the Vassar umbrella to be cared for and watched over. So I know we're in great hands that way. And if something comes up, then we're going to find it early and we're going to resolve the issue. I spoke to a cousin of mine who, it's her mother and my mother were sisters, and she has been diagnosed with breast cancer. She had endometrial cancer, and she is now dealing with colon cancer. And it took a long time until she actually was tested. But she does carry the BRCA genetic mutation as well. But at first they didn't know it. And I didn't know it, at first. Why does this keep happening? Why do I keep getting diagnosed with, with breast cancer? I didn't fit any of the normal statistics, but it is what it is. And at least I have that information now, and we can be, we can be proactive and resolve anything that comes along at us. And I want to thank you also all for your help. I know that you've been very supportive and understanding. You've been great with our nonprofit organization. You're all an important part of it. I couldn't do it without your help and support, that's for sure. Uncle Harvey and I are both extremely thankful that all our children support it the way they do. His breast cancer awareness, and I will share that information. So his HIS is my brother's initials. He always hated his middle name, but guess what? It had a purpose. And so his breast cancer awareness, we have a great informative website. Sam especially has been an integral part of that great design and providing the information. www.hisbreastcancer.org. We have information inclusive with the Bassett Center on genetic testing and genetic mutations. So you can find that information there. With Jeremy and Sean and their leadership, we have a young adult tab as well to have great information on that. There's a support group on Facebook, male breast cancer support, provided by not just us, the co-founders, but the the men who have been diagnosed with breast cancer, and we're all here to help support. We were part of a great documentary, an informative documentary. If you haven't seen it, it's called Pink and Blue, Colors of Hereditary Cancer. Our family was an important part of creating this piece with the director, Alan Blasberg, and I know Bassett Center was a part of it as well. It's available. It's out there. Search it. It's you'll laugh, you'll cry, but you'll gain a great amount of information as well. And, I try not to get emotional here, but, it's been a rough ride. There's a lot of every day, it's in the back of my head. There's not a day I don't wake up or go to sleep without thinking about myself, my own health, the health of my 3 sons, the health of my 6 wonderful, beautiful grandchildren, 3 boys, 3 girls. Knowing what I could have passed down to them, it's not easy. It's not an easy pill to swallow. I remember asking my mother how she felt about that, because that's where it came from. And, you can't think about the maybes and the what ifs and the can be's. You take one day at a time. That's how we live our life. I try to live it each day to the fullest, not only for myself, but with my family and with the people that I advocate for, the men, the women. If I'm in a crowd of people and conversation begins and I hear that there's some cancer in their family, we talk about, have you been tested? Do you know about genetic testing? What does it mean to you? And just that conversation, opening up that conversation, you can save a life. And that's what I try to do every day. So it's been I've been doing this for a long time. Let's see, 37 and now 65. It's been a long time. But I can't say that I'm not appreciative. Why did it happen to me? And I think it happened because I was a person that was going to help make a difference and change lives and save lives, and hopefully my own family as well, and grandchildren. So love you boys, every inch of me. Very thankful, appreciative, and I hope that we can share many, many more years together and watch the advances in research and science. And maybe by the time your children are old enough to understand what our family has been impacted with, that there will be so many new advances that they'll say, well, thankfully, so much has been discovered and I don't have to worry about that anymore, or I'll just have a vaccine, or, I don't know, we'll all have this magical pill or something. So that's my hope and prayer. And that's why I got tested, for the future of my family.